Alrighty, what's up YouTube? Long time no talk. I'm at a baseball diamond right now, skated over here to tell you guys a story, and it's this crazy story about coincidences and how there's no such thing as coincidences. So yesterday on my Instagram I did a little story asking people to send in requests of what I should do sermons about, and someone said trusting God. So I want to tell you this crazy story. So when I was working at as a youth pastor at my dad's church way back like 3 or 4 years ago, he got asked to preach at this church and he couldn't come, so they sent me instead. I went and I preached on a sermon about the woman at the well in John chapter 4. So one of the ladies in the congregation comes up to me. She says, "Hey, you're great. You remind me of my son. He's an intern in Kauai, Hawaii." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'd love to meet him one day." Fast forward a year and a half later, I'm working at a church called The Well, and a guy walks up to me and my friend and says, "Hey, I know you. Like, you ran track at my school." He was talking to my friend, and they talked for a little bit. I just kind of stood there, and then he introduced me to this guy. I was like, "Hey, I'm Alex." He's like, "Oh, I'm Jordan. I used to work at a church in Kauai. I was an intern there." I was like, "No way. I think I met your mom like a year and a half ago." So that was weird, crazy thing that happened. And then he ended up being a leader at my youth group when I was working at that church, The Well. Now, fast forward, he ends up doing some mission work with a company called FCA. It's crazy, I'm wearing this sweatshirt right now. And he calls the church he was interning at in Kauai, Hawaii, and asks for support and other stuff like that. And so they end up helping him out. And before he hung up the phone, they said, "Hey, we're looking for a youth pastor. Don't you know a couple guys in California and Fresno?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll look around." So he calls me one night. I'm watching a movie with my wife, and I decline his call, and I call him back later, and he says, "Hey, I put your name in a hat for a position in Hawaii." Little did he know, me and my wife had prayed and prayed and prayed when we first got married that we'd be able to do ministry in Hawaii, because she's Hawaiian, and we felt just a real burden in our heart for the children and the youth that live in Hawaii. And so we prayed and prayed and prayed, and then kind of just stopped praying about it for a while after I started working at other churches. But then all those things, crazy things happened, and I ended up living in Kauai, doing youth ministry there, had the time of our lives for a year and a half before God asked us to move back here. And the reason why I tell you that is because when someone replied to my story yesterday and said, "Hey, Alex, do a sermon about trusting God," I didn't really know what to talk about. And then I was picking up my Bible today, and in Luke chapter 1, I had this Bible with like little sides that have, you can write notes on it. And it says in quotation marks, "It's a coincidence is an excuse for not trusting God." And I wrote that next to Luke chapter 2 because Luke chapter 2 is about the birth of Christ. And the birth of Christ can be seen as a coincidence, but it's too complex, and the chances are too low for something like this to happen for it to be coincidence. And what I'm talking about is the fact that Jesus in John chapter 6 verse 51 calls himself the bread of life. That's like one of his nicknames. But if you go back to Luke chapter 2, he's born in a place called Bethlehem, which is translated into the house of bread. And on top of that, he's born into a, what's it called? Manger. And a manger is a feeding trough for animals. So think about that. This guy who's nicknamed the house of bread, known as the bread of life, which that nickname was given to him in the Old Testament when the people of Israel ate manna from heaven. And it was a symbol of Jesus. This bread came down from heaven. He's also born in a place called the house of bread in a feeding trough. What are the chances of something like that? Even the fact that it's a feeding trough and animals eat out of this manger, this feeding trough, is another crazy situation that's too good to be coincidence. For example, we are those animals. We're those animals eating out of this feeding trough, eating the bread of life, because it gives us life. It gives us nourishment, because sin has made us like animals. The bad things in the world that we do, it ends up making us more beastly and more animalistic than human. But after eating this bread of life, things change. And so if you're going through life and you're thinking, it's a coincidence that I look the way I look, that I live the place I live in, that I'm passionate about the things I'm passionate about, that I'm talented with the things I'm talented about, those aren't coincidences. It's not coincidence who your mom is, who your dad is, who your friends are. Nothing in life is a coincidence. Every detail of your life is known and has a plan by God. And so go into this year trusting God that every single day there's a plan. There's a plan for where you're at. There's a plan that for you to listen to this right now isn't a coincidence. You're watching this because it's God's plan that you would listen to this. And I think it's cool that the #1 trending song of 2018 was God's Plan by Drake. Shout out to Drake. If you're watching this, your life has a plan. God has a plan for you too, Drake. But love you guys. My hands are freezing. I'm going to go skate to warm up. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you later.